Welcome to the Welcome to the Awakening podcast. And I suppose you're probably wondering why we do this, but I have to go into the live stream and it just goes a bit weird, so I don't see it. Welcome to the Awakening podcast, and you'll find all our episodes. You just scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com. You'll find everything about Arnold on braingym.fitness, and we both have school groups, and you'll find the links in the show notes. How are you today, Arnold?
I'm very good, very good. Which is not natural. Well, it is natural, but unfortunately in these times it's not. So today we're going to talk about Alzheimer's / dementia. It's not the same, but it's very similar. I studied brain health actually for the last 25 years because I wanted to understand what's going on inside of us. Outside is basically what we say, so our words, and what we do. Those are outside expressions of something which is going inside where we have no clue. We have no clue with other people what's going on. Roy is looking at me now like, He could be thinking like, oh, this is a weird intro. Or he could think, oh, that sounds good. Or something in between. I don't know, because he's saying nothing. Yeah, that's the outside expression. The inside what's going on, basically everything what's going inside, that determines what goes outside. And with people with Alzheimer's dementia, there's no congruency anymore. It's like they have no control what's going inside, and they have no control on what is going outside, which most people are supposed to have. My mother passed away 3 years ago already. I took care of her for 8 years, and she had dementia. So I lived with her 7/24. I took care of her. So I know what the symptoms are and how it relates, and it's for everybody different. But it's a nasty disease because currently there is no cure. Well, let's not get into the trap of discussing for what things there is a cure in the current medical system, but let's not go there. The main thing is like, it's not you pop a pill or you give a couple of powders or things and then it will be less or even disappear. It doesn't. There are all kinds of studies. They talked about plaque in the neurons in your brain, but it's not. So the moment you have it, well, it can be the same or it can grow worse, but it won't disappear. That's one thing. The other thing, there is, as opposed to to mental illness has kind of lost its stigma over the last 10, 20, 30 years. There's not much, it seems even a badge of honor, which I totally disagree with, if you say, no, I'm depressed. I have a burnout. I'm anxious. And people say, oh, yeah, I understand. I'm stressed. Oh, yeah. Talking about dementia and everything still has stigma. Because your behavior can, and in a lot of cases will, change quite dramatically, and people will start doing crazy things, at least to the outside world. So that's why I think there's still a stigma. And a lot of people with Alzheimer's dementia is like, they're not taken to hospital. So what is happening actually is that, like I did, there's a lot of people who are taking care of most likely their parents. But it is they take the parent in their house, or in my case, I start living in the house of my mother with her. It doesn't get registered. It doesn't get noticed. So even, and I'm going to share in a moment the numbers with which I did some research around, I think you could easily multiply that by 2 or 3, because that my mother had dementia and I was taking care was never registered anywhere. And I've spoken to a lot of people, well, that's also related to my age and the age of my parents, is that a lot of people have similar experiences. Like they live with their parents or the parent, they take care of them, but it's outside of the official medical system because, number one, in a lot of hospitals, there's no place for them. Like I said, there is no cure. The only thing which is there is, how they call it, assisted living, or they give nice words to it, is that if they are becoming too much trouble holding them in your house, you can put them somewhere else, but basically they're being locked up. With my mother, that also in the end, well, it's got to do with 2 things. I had a very serious car crash and I was 9 weeks in hospital in which I could not take care of my mother. So that was a huge problem. And the other thing is that she, for instance, I had to go out to the supermarket to buy food. And sometimes she would just put on her coat and leave the house and wait for a taxi or go walking somewhere, and then she was gone. I had once said that the neighbor a couple of houses down the street had picked her up as like, what are you doing? No, I'm going to this and this and this, which was totally not the case. But so I could not have that happen. So I had to kind of lock her up at home. I had to close all the doors that she couldn't get away. Well, and then some nurses didn't like that. Yeah, but what if there's fire or whatever? Yeah, okay, fair enough. But anyway, she ended up in, I call it assisted living, where she had her own room and there was 7 by 24 nurses around and everything. And she lived with, say, 12 or so other people with various degrees. Some of them were totally crazy. And others, you wouldn't notice. You could have a normal conversation. My mother was kind of in between. But in order to get there, I had to put in, like a safe, I had to put in a code so that the door would open and then I could get in. And I had to make sure that nobody get out and then I would close the door. So it is basically in a locked institution. Now you might say, oh, it's just a few people. That's not the case. The latest number says, so again, bear in mind what I said, most people are not officially registered. They're not part of the medical system. 57 million people are living with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia as of 2025. So this is, as we speak, 57 million. That's why I say I'm very comfortable. You could multiply by 2, 3, 4. We're talking about hundreds of millions of people. And the number is expected to rise sharply in the coming years, reaching 83 million by 2030. That is just in 4 years. And potentially doubling to 152 million people by 2050 as the population ages. 152 by 2050, my timing, it's 500 million. So it's huge. And again, at the moment, there's no cure. You're stuck with it. So,
Well, I think you're right with the numbers, because the city that I grew up in, it's scary, because I'm talking to my mother all the time and she's saying, oh, this person has it, that person have it. And like, you don't kind of realize how bad it is. And there was an ex-girlfriend of mine that her mother got it. And, like, it was I knew the woman for a few years, and then I'm seeing later the picture she's posting, putting it home, and you can just see not the same person. Like they're just it's so sad to see. There was a guy on TikTok. He was he's probably on a few different social media, but he was recording his father exactly through the journey. So I could see it for a few years. I'm not sure as he passed because I didn't see it for a while. I know he fell down the stairs, broke his hip and stuff like that. But he was going through transitions that at times he's like, "Where's my wife?" And your man would say, "You got divorced 10 years ago. Where's my car? You don't drive no more. Your license was taken off you," because obviously, and he keep forgetting things like that. And even, "Who are you again?" Talking to his son, he'd answer him, tell him everything. And 2 minutes later, he's asking him the exact same questions. And I don't think people realize how much that will kind of take out of you. It's scary. And like my neighbor, she's one of these people. She goes up to the shop, chats to everybody. So she's gone for half the day. She knows, and she's saying like they're either dead from it or they're in homes from it. I in that area of where I come from, like it's unreal the amount of people. When I looked at the statistics, they were saying, "Oh, Cork has 7,500." Based on the information just from the area that I'm with, I reckon what you've said earlier, by 3. And I mean, even if we look at the poison dart, which we covered a few episodes back, like the VAERS recording, they were saying that even if it's 1% of what's recorded, I think it's the same here. The fact that there's kind of, no cure as such is kind of like, okay, be quiet. Don't let people know how bad this is. So it's scary. And there's one of the things, and this is something that I'm not sure if you thought about or your thoughts on it. A lot of times when people are talking and if somebody forgets it, they'll go, "Oh, you must have Alzheimer's." A lot of people say things like that. And I think that's dangerous saying things like that because it's kind of conditioning the person and then the person thinks it. And the power of our mind could actually bring it on. I'm not sure is that possible, but I know a lot of people say things like that when they forget, "So I can't find their keys" and stuff like that. People would throw comments like, "Ah, you've Alzheimer's."
Well, I've never done that, and I'm never doing it, but it is definitely possible if you give that suggestion. And I know people are saying that it's like, "Oh, you start with Alzheimer's early." Ha, ha, ha. Is it? But that's the same thing like the placebo effect. It has an impact. Yeah. It's like you start to think it, and by starting to think about it, it will increase. I never had that with my mother with her. I just wanted to say something, and we can talk about, let's call them patients, the people with Alzheimer's. It's number one, it's really crucial to understand that it is most of the time not only Alzheimer's dementia there. My mother also had Parkinson. My mother had also incontinence, which means I was washing her clothes or bedding every day. And if a grown-up pees in his or her bed, it's huge. Yeah? So it's not just one thing, it's a combination of all of those things. And one personal experience was at some point in time, when she was in that, let's call it assisted living, it's basically prison, but it's like, she would recognize my face, but she would, and it depends on her mood, she would either think I was her husband. She even thought in a lot of time I was her father. By the way, I've never seen her father because he died before I was born. So, and sometimes he said I was her son. That is not easy to deal with. Yeah, she would say, daddy, whatever, to me. To my grandfather, who I'd never seen. So what people forget is that they experience no problem themselves. It isn't the impact on the care providers, the rest of the families, the sons, daughters, uncles, aunts. Because that has a huge impact. My mother didn't thought it was crazy or whatever, and I was like, Yeah, and you must not correct her because it doesn't help and it makes things worse. So when she said like "Hi, Daddy" to me, I would say yes, hello, but I had to. What is this? Yeah. So and then she would say to the other people like, "Hey, my husband is here." Yeah, so it's really weird. Yeah. So I known as like taking care of these people. It it was for me a full-time job. I didn't get paid. There was no government benefits. There was no subsidies, nothing. I, I could hardly work on my business because of this. So it's impacting, well, kind of the ecosystem of the person around it. And what's happening now is that this growth is because there are now many baby boomers. Yeah, that is the largest group of people in the world who are retiring, getting older. So if there are more elderly people, there are more people with Alzheimer's dementia. That's one cause of it. But the other one is that the age is getting lower when people getting this Alzheimer's dementia. They call it onset dementia, onset Alzheimer's. It now starts at 55, 60. And the last part, which really links to what we did the last few weeks, is I asked the system and said, what are the main causes? And the main theory is like, it started with low education. I don't believe that. Hearing loss. I don't know. Depression and social isolation. I don't know. Smoking. Maybe because you get chemicals in your brain and everything, so that could ruin stuff. Excessive alcohol use. Yeah, I can relate to that. Physical inactivity. Well, that's terrible for your brain, I tell you. Hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. Yes, that will create problem. Unhealthy diets. Yes, I can relate to that. The next one I was shocked by because I have it myself, traumatic brain injury. And then I come to air pollution. And that is what we discussed last week with the chemtrails and everything around it is, and one of the main things impacting your brain, and I think I saw studies around causing Alzheimer's disease, is aluminum. And aluminum is what they are spraying with the chemtrails, but that's also in our water. So there are substantial things, and I'm sure that the jab also has an influence. So there are a lot of it's one thing that there's a group of people who become older and more prone to this, but it's also like there's so much outside influences where we are getting poisoned that this will grow. But we're talking about, like I said, in a few years, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people, and you can easily multiply it by 3 or 4. So yeah, and then the ecosystem, it's, well, maybe it's a husband, maybe it's children. So at least 3, 4 people who are providing the care and the help and dealing with that. So we're talking about easily more than 1 billion people.
Yeah, it's right.
And nobody's talking about it, and nobody cares about it. And actually, there is a lot of prevention what you can do. Actually, this is one of the reasons that I started Brain Fitness, and I created everything around Brain Fitness. But it doesn't mean it's like, oh, it started, now let's work on this and this. No, because then you're too late. You need to start working on your brain and your health 20, 30, 40 years before it happens. So that's why I say to people, after the age of 20, you should start with Brain Fitness. Just like with your body fitness, after let's say you're 30, first slowly, but then it ramps up, your strength declines. That's not if you do nothing. That is why movement, exercise, going to the gym, walking your dog, all these things are so important, because it's a natural process. It goes down. But you can keep it flat, or you can even get better at it. The same is true for your brain. So if you actively start using your brain, keep on using your brain after you're 30, there are studies that you can prevent it from up to 80 and 90%. But that doesn't mean it's like all day sitting on the couch drinking beer and watching TV and eating Alta Press, calling the delivery boys, can you bring me my food? Which is the lifestyle now of most people.
Unfortunately, that's why I think we're going to see younger people when it goes through the roof, because, you were talking about the things that bring it on. Tinfoil is one that I realized is deadly before, and I stopped cooking with tinfoil because the metal is going into your food when you have it in the oven. Also, energy drinks. You go into a shop now and there's here, it's like 18 you have to be to drink energy drinks, but of course they figure out a way to get it. Nearly every young people, there's a high percentage, are taking energy drinks full of toxins and everything. The Coke Zero, Pepsi Max, all these kind of things, very toxic. So all of the foods and drinks that people are taking, and the same with like the likes of McDonald's, there's zero nutrition. And people are actually taking this. And there's another side as well, is like, I know somebody that basically Down syndrome, and they're 60 and they've got it, and there's somebody taking care of them. And I went, like, by hearing that, I was thinking, with the amount of people that are autistic and everything, because they're very difficult, some of them are very hard to deal with. If they start getting it, and it might be now in their 40s instead of 60s, it's going to be like, even if there is help and stuff like that, a lot of people, they can't cope with that. It's like when you see really bad cases. So that's extremely scary. Regarding healing and cures and stuff like that, I had a guest on, I'll be releasing it this week, Norbert Hauser, and he was saying that the coffee destroys the grey matter in the brain. Yet they're kind of saying on the publications there, or anything that I read, it was like, oh, coffee's good for you, it helps brain decline and stuff like that. So they're encouraging people to bring coffee. But this guy, with scientific research, has shown that it's damaging. But I always like to give people a bit of positive news. So I had a guest, it was episode number 284, Darlene Green. Stem cell technology, like a light, it's like a patch you put on her head. Her husband had it, and he was going completely downhill. And when she started doing that, he started getting his humor back. He started getting his memory. She said he's not cured, but he's 10 times better than he was. But she said he had a bald patch that started healing, and the color of his hair started being restored. So from what I can see, obviously they'll be trying to push the magic pill to you, all these doctors and everything, that they're trying to sell you something, which I've seen that it damages liver and things like that, depending on what you get. But the one thing that I see that's positive is the stem cell technology, and I'll include that in the show notes for people to see.
Absolutely. And in addition to that, like I said, and it's not just a commercial for what I'm doing. No, I developed brain fitness because of my experience with my mother. And I developed it as a response to my sister is a lifelong depression. So that is why I developed it. It was not out of luxury. It was that I saw my sister and my mother in situations which were terrible, and there was no cure. And then I saw that, like, what can we do from a prevention and optimization point of view, which is much more useful than while you're there, because then you're screwed, basically. Yeah. And you don't have to believe me, but the two doctors, it's husband and wife, called Sherzai. They're from the US, and they have done the first study of a couple of years of their Alzheimer's patients and everything around it, and they tested the low stuff, And that's where I got the number from the 80-90% prevention, which is possible if you change your lifestyle. And they call it neuro. That's the abbreviation which they get, and it stands for the right nutrition, we just discussed. Exercise, keep on moving and doing anything. Unwind, restorative sleep, and optimizing cognitive activity means what I'm saying to people all the time in most of my podcast interviews is you need to be working on complex work. You need purpose, complexity, and challenge. You need to keep it working. And the moment you're only consuming and watching TV, it completely deteriorates, which is normal. It's like if you don't use your right arm, it will completely deteriorate and you won't be able to use it anymore. So it's like you have to challenge your brain and keep on doing that, but that's not going to work and say you're 80 and you say, Arnold, can I do that? Yeah, you can do that, but the effect will be zero. So that is why from youngest age possible, just like body fitness, you need to work on brain fitness. It's not a luxury. It's not something like, oh, you got nothing else to do. No, it is prevention. Prevention for something which will soon impact billions of people if they do nothing.
And this is something that you talked to me about, and I'm not sure if you want to discuss it, but I think it was beautiful when you were saying it, that when your mother was visualizing things or seeing things, you went along with it as opposed to knocking her. And I think that's important as well, if you'd like to share that.
Yeah. I was going to. It is like, just like she was saying, I'm her husband or a father. It's no use in arguing with her because she doesn't know. And she was just happy to see me. And so instead of arguing, which makes it probably worse for the two of you, I just smiled and said, oh, okay, it's fine. So I'm just accepting the way she is. And what she did is, when she was still at home, most of the day she was on which a lot of elderly people are, they had a fixed chair in front of the window and she was looking outside. And then when I would come and say, Arnold, have a look there in the sky. There's a car there, and there's some houses, and I see there are people walking there. I see nothing. And they're there and there. I said, oh, okay, and where's that one? Oh, yes, there. So I just went along. And she thought it was just a friendly encounter with me. It's like, she was sharing what she was seeing. And instead of saying, well, you're a stupid idiot, there's nothing, I was just like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, it's fine. And she thought we had a friendly conversation. So, again, there is no cure. So it's no use in correcting them because they don't know that they're doing that. She doesn't even realize, like I said, she called me her father, whereas I have not ever seen in my life that person. But it's not that she wanted to piss me off. It just, well, her brain is totally mixed up. I was already happy that she recognized my face. And just like with the things in the sky, it was like, hey, we had a nice chat. So that makes your life more bearable. Because if you ever say, oh, it's this, you make the life of the both of you very, very terrible. So just accept the way it is. And just accept what they're doing, just like normal. Yeah. Which might be even the case. If you guys have been listening to our podcast, it's like, there's such weird things happening in our realities at many levels that even what we're seeing might be totally untrue and not correct or whatever. So it's like, don't argue. It's like, that's how she sees the world and it's how I see the world. Maybe both of us are not even correct, but it's like, it's better to accept it and to be kind rather than the opposite. I thought when The positive thing is I had the feeling that she was, when she had this damage, she was more real than when she didn't have it. Because when she was not, before that, she was always playing a role. She was never really herself. And when she had this ease, I was like, oh, she's more real now. So try to see those things. I know it's not easy, but it's like, I could see that she was 100% honest, whereas previously she would just play a role. She was not honest. And now I could see, like, yeah, that's what she meant. Yeah. There was one time, and then I'll finish up with stories to show you that I've had deep experience with this. Is like, I visited her in that assisted living, and then I said, where's my mother? She's not in her room. No, she's walking around. And she had the, how do you call that? This thing where you can walk behind a stroller.
A stroller, yeah.
And she had her back on it and her stuff. And then somebody, I found her. I said, what are you doing? She said, I'm going on a trip. I packed my bag and I'm gonna leave, and we're going on holiday. We're on a trip. I said, oh, that's nice. Where are you going to? I mean, just accept it as reality. Don't fight it. But at the same time, and I hope nobody will have to experience it, but unfortunately, it's likely you will. If you are listening to this, work on your prevention optimization of your own brain. Otherwise, you will have the same fate.
My grandmother, Geraldine was her name. She lived a few weeks short, 2 or 3 weeks short of 96. And it was cancer got her in the end. Her mind was totally perfect. She used to do crosswords. She used to be reading. But everybody, we're a close family, would be calling, sitting down with her, having a cup of tea. We'd bring her to our house. Whereas I see people, they don't even call to their grandmother. It's like the only time they pay attention is when they die or something like that. It's like, so if you have people, whether they're parents or grandparents, make sure that you're actually going and sitting down with them and encourage people, even if it's yourself, to be doing things, not being on AI, not being on the computer, not thinking you friends on your phone, but actually go out and meet people, go for a walk. And like, I think that by stimulating your brain, you keep it working. I'm not sure, like, there's so many different things that are attacking us that are causing this that we've mentioned during the show, but just from what I witnessed from her, that's why I think her mind was perfect, because she always kept it active.
That's the most key point. Like with your body, like with your brain, keep it active. And if you have not been active while you were young, then make it active now. There are still new neurons being born in your brain, even in your 90s. Neuroplasticity we can do up to any age. So it's not the limitation in your brain, it's the limitation in you by not using it.
So basically, we've created a SKOOL group. So there's a lot of courses, including the anti-aging one is in that. So maybe you might want to just touch what's included in that for those that might be interested after listening to that.
Well, basically, it's a masterclass where I held a workshop with Roy where we discuss these things, where we show you and we discuss that you need to keep your brain active, but not starting when it's too late, but starting when there is still time to work on things. Yeah, I started actually strength training when I was 59. That was still doable, but it was very tough. I could do it because I've been doing sports all my life. But when I grew up, there was no strength training. And later on, strength training was only I want to look good on the beach. And I don't like being on the beach, so I don't care how I look on the beach. But then later on, I realized, my strength declined, so I need to work on that. So I didn't know. I really didn't know. So it's like, But the same is with your brain. Whether you're in your 40s, 50s, or you're 25, you got to keep on working and make brain fitness a practice, just like body fitness, exercise, and movement. That's the most important message I want to give you.
Perfect. So you find everything from Arnold on braingym.fitness, and also the SKOOL group. I'll put it in the link both on the audio and the video. Find everything about me, scan the QR code or go to roycollin.com. Until next week, take care.